Hi. Okay, so today I want to talk about neuroplasticity. And of course, that's just a big fancy word for saying, the things that you think about matter and the things that you do over and over become easier. So, like in the beginning, when you're trying to ride a bike, you really have to think about sitting on the seat and how to move your feet and where you're going on the road. Same like with driving a car, you have to get in and turn things and think about your steering and think about where you're going and check your pedals and your mirrors and all kinds of things. But then eventually, your brain adapts to it in a way that's called neuroplasticity. So then you're driving, and this is what happens when you don't even remember going from place to place. You just sort of arrive. So you're just driving, you're going, you're riding your bike. You don't have to relearn how to ride your bike anymore. You just get on your bike and go, or get in the car and go. So it's kind of like the old saying, like what neurons that fire together wire together, and that's one of the expressions in science where they used to say, okay, here's some a neuron, and it's got to jump over. Here's two neurons. It's got to just jump over like this little synapse, and they've got to connect, right? So when that happens, it just sort of jumps from one to the other, right? So it jumps from one to the other. And when so say they're here. So say they're here, and your neurotransmitters have to jump from here to make a highway, to make a road, to connect the two. It'll jump when you're thinking about it, and as you're getting better at doing the activity and learning to drive, it gets closer, so it has to jump less. And then at the end, it basically doesn't even have to jump anymore. It just is a straight highway. So you train your brain. To get good at things, and that's called neuroplasticity. So why am I talking about this? What the heck does it mean? It's because when you're chronically ill and you're not getting better, part of the reason, and it's not in your mind, of course you're physically ill, you have physical symptoms, you have a lot of problems, maybe they're from your gut, maybe they're from the bacteria, maybe they're, infections, a fungus, bacteria, whatever, maybe, whatever you've been diagnosed with isn't really the issue. The problem is your brain sort of falls into a pattern. So especially when we're talking about pain and something chronic. So if you've got chronic pain, which is one of my worst symptoms, it's because your brain gets good at feeling pain. So at the beginning, it just sort of, it had to jump farther. And then now, this is your day-to-day experience. You've got like a super highway road going on, because it basically, you even have to just subtly think of a symptom or feel one of your symptoms, and already, boom, the connection's made. Your circular spiral continues. So I just want to talk about this a little bit, because it's super important. If you want to get well, you need to start to rewire your brain and make different connections. And I resist this, and I think a lot of people resist this, because they think, well, if I could just think my way better, I would. Like, don't you think I would? Or they think, like, if I admit that my psychology or my brain could do this, then am I a failure because I haven't been able to do this? Or am I admitting something that maybe it's not physical, or it's all in my brain? So no, that's not what I'm saying. This is definitely real. It's definitely physical. It's definitely been caused by a physical trigger. But the problem is it's also reinforced by a psychological trigger, which is your neurons. And as they wire together, they fire together. So this is why chronic illness goes on so long. It's because, unbeknownst to you, you have a real physical illness, a real physical trigger, a real physical event, a real trauma, a real illness. But then your body, recognizes a symptom, feels a symptom, knows what its triggers are, resists these things. As soon as your body in any way senses danger, or senses that you're about to flare up, or your symptom's going to get triggered, or if I eat this food, I'm going to get a symptom, or if I stay up late, I'm going to get a symptom, or if I exercise too hard, I'm going to get a symptom, or, whatever. It's thoughts in your mind is spinning out of control. Your mind is going, right? And it's feeding on itself, because every thought, boom, now you're making it stronger. Boom, you're making it stronger. And you're not doing it, it's unconscious, because you're basically, humans have evolved. They've basically evolved to, from basically your brain's job is to keep you safe. So although it's a lie, most of the things that your brain tells you, if something has repeated, like if you walk across the street and you don't get hit by a car, you have no problem walking across the street. If you walk across the street and you nearly get hit by a car, the next time you walk across the street, you're going to be a little more cautious. But if nothing happens to you, you probably forget it. But if you almost get hit by a car again, or you do get hit by a car, and then the next time you go to cross the street, you get hit by a car again, pretty soon, and it won't take long, 3 or 4 times, and that neural connection is made. You're going to be afraid to cross the street. You're going to be looking for cars. You know, it's like Pavlov's law with the dog, with the ringing of the bell and the dog salivates. So these connections are really real, and I just wanted you to start to think about your own patterns. Think about if you sense a symptom coming on, you're already firing a neuron. If you start to think, you know, oh, I can't get better, or I won't get better, boom, it's instilled. If you start to keep doing these patterns over and over, oh, I can't eat that food, boom, the connection's made. I can't, do that, or your patterns, the things that you do and think about every day matter. So I just want you to start to think about your patterns. Think about how part of this syndrome or, illness, this chronic illness that you're working with is going on much longer because of the part that is habitualized and repeating in your subconscious, and just like neurons are firing together, they're wiring together, and it's dragging out the illness because you really have to do something major, boom, to break that connection. You've got to stop it in its tracks, and it's very difficult because if you're really chronically ill, most of your day is spent obsessing and focusing on your symptoms, because how could it not be? They're intense, you're suffering, they're horrific in many cases, and sometimes it's a 24/7 thought process, but sometimes you'll notice that if you watch a funny TV show, maybe your symptoms disappear for a little while, even 10 minutes, or if you are engaged in a conversation or something happens, and even for 5 minutes your symptoms kind of disappear. That's a clue to you that you're not doing this to yourself, but that's a clue to you that the brain is very powerful, and that if we start to put our brain in other areas, we start to make different connections, we start to rewire the brain, we start to build up those connections, that we can actually do a lot to help ourselves. I'm not saying that the original triggers are just going to disappear. No, you still have to take care of them. I'm not suggesting that at all. You need to take care of those through sleep and diet and exercise and all the things that you need to do. But 50% of it, if you get your mind in the right space, you can, if you're continuing to tell yourself, I can't get well, I won't get well, this triggers me, that triggers me, oh my gosh, I'm in a cycle, you're firing that together, and you need to do something drastic to break out of it. So I'll give tips on how to break out of that in the next video, but for now I just wanted you to start to become aware and to think about what is wiring together in your mind. What have you created? Like, what kinds of neurons are now, have they fired together, and now they're wiring together to create a cycle. So just kind of think about it, assess. I think you probably already know it. If you're chronically ill, you probably already know that as soon as you think a thought, boom, the symptoms come. As soon as one symptom comes, boom, another one comes. It's just like a snowball effect. It seems to just like never be able to break. So start to think about those, and I'll come back to give some tips on how to break that, because that's a super big key to this whole thing.